All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's November 18th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and then showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share it with your team. So with that, let's kick it off. I have a lot of announcements, more than I can fit on this page, but we'll stick with this. The first exciting bit of news is, as many of you have asked, and I was embarrassed we didn't have it for the longest time, we are finally adding show notes with timestamps to the videos on YouTube, so you can skip around and know ahead of time what the video is without investing an hour of your time to figure that out. So if you head over here to YouTube/C/CloudPosse, the latest videos that we have all have that, but we are going back retroactively and updating them as we find some extra time here. So in addition to that, what Andy, who's also on the call here, who's leading the charge on this, is we are also uploading the transcripts. And we will, this is also labor of love, so we'll continue doing this as we go, but expect to see more transcripts there and make it easier to search for our videos as well. Especially if English isn't your native language, this can be also a great way to learn the DevOps speak and how it's written. So as you watch these videos, you'll see the transcripts appear here as it's playing. All right. So that's the news there. Any questions or suggestions on this? Oh, also down here is where you'll see the show notes broken down, links, but also what's happening at what time in the video.
All right. Hi. I'm new. I was using your modules, and really good that you're doing this. I'm just gonna follow. How does the agenda go for this? For example, if we want to ask you something and ask for clarification about something, you're gonna say when you do it?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for asking. So I'm going to go through these announcements here first, and then we have the talking points. So post your question right now in the Office Hours channel so we don't forget about it. And I'm going to go through these questions first and then ask for a call for questions and answer those as much as we can. Sound like a plan?
Well, yeah, it already looks like a job well done. The way you organize it, yeah, very nice. Okay, I'm going to follow. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Seven. So the other exciting announcement is another Cloud Posse specific announcement. So for those of you who've been around our community for a while, you know we have a container that we use in every one of our engagements. It is the foundation of our strategy. We call this Geodesic. It is a cloud automation shell. What that means is this lets us bundle the tools that we use to deliver a solution with a customer all in a container so it runs consistently anywhere Docker is run. Historically, this has only been supported for Alpine. Well, thanks to Cloudsmith, we now support Alpine packages, Debian packages, and any day now RPN packages. So we are now distributing Geodesic as both an Alpine base image and a Debian base image, and we'll continue adding distributions because it's very easy for us to do that now. The urgency for us to do this was just, look, Alpine, it was exciting when it came out. We were using it. It's better maybe for server applications than console applications that you interact with. The lack of libc and the fact that it uses Musel makes it so a lot of things just don't run on it. We depend on a tool called Teleport for a lot of our customer engagements by Gravitational. Teleport just won't run anymore. It used to, but not anymore. Just flat out won't run on Alpine anymore. So we had to basically roll this, accelerate this, so we could continue supporting Teleport with our customers. So as what is happening with this is also, let's see here if we point it out. So the tagging format has changed slightly. So now instead of just having a semver, now it's a semver dash the distro. So this is Geodesic version 0138.0-Alpine. And then we have a similar one for Debian, and soon we'll have one for CentOS. Any questions about this or Geodesic?
Yeah, okay, a really quick question. So from this
Yeah, for sure.
image, what kind of task do you perform? I mean, do you, for example, do you assume rows?
Yeah.
For that, for example, do you, and from there you run your Terraform after it assumes a row,
Yeah,
right?
I'll give you a few use cases of how we use this tool, so it makes sense. So, uh, really, it's just a glorified Docker container, first of all. So you don't have to use this. You could use any Docker container. The thing is that the DevOps community has kind of gravitated towards this one tool per container. So we have our Terraform container, we have our Helm container, and while in principle I like that idea, in practice it's very hard to stitch together lots of tools as part of a tool chain if you're doing that outside of the container. So what we've done is we stick those and version them together in the same container. We orchestrate our workflows in that container to do it. For example, if you're using Terraform, how do you use Terraform? How do you version Terraform? Some people do that natively on your workstation and use Terraform env and have a .terraform version file, which I get. It's a consistent pattern. It's used by Rails. It's used by Ruby. It's used by the Ruby community, the Python community, and the JavaScript community, etc. But when in like our problem is we deal with so many different customers with so many different versions pinned at so many different things that we would go nuts if we had to try and come up with a native solution. So that's why we go with a Docker container solution. It's similar to if you've used Vagrant back in the day. You can have like a Vagrant machine that you can SSH into and has your tool chain, and you can distribute that everywhere. So we're using Docker instead of Vagrant, and then we run that locally. However, since this is a Docker container, you can run it anywhere Docker containers are run. So now if you want to stick that container in your GitHub action and run Terraform, you could do that. Or if you want to stick it, in your CodeFresh or Circle CI, you can do anywhere containers are run, you can use the same container. You can even deploy this container inside of Kubernetes and do triaging. So it can be like a interactive tools container that you can use for debugging things inside of a Kubernetes cluster, and you exec into the container.
Yeah, I have worked on similar solutions using the CICD in a container that has all the tools. And I'm going to take a look at that. I mean, it sounds like something that has cohesion, right? And also dependencies are being resolved easier that way, right? And you can keep and you can really be flexible when you have such a powerful tool. But actually, is it big, the image? Is it fast to spin up and all that?
Well, so yeah, this is a good question. So when we started this, the drive was to have a very minimal image, and I'm going to say we failed on that. So we start with a minimal image, but we install a lot of tools as part of our tool chain, and it's grown. So it's a gig
Absolutely, yeah.
plus.
But what you said about triaging, if you keep it, if you have a container, a pod that scales, and at the same time has it already run, you can use that, and actually you have it on demand. I mean, already running, and that's a
Yeah,
cool. You can use it. You can spin up runners like that. For it doesn't matter. You need.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we've done that too. We've deployed Atlantis inside of here, or you can deploy GitHub runners inside of here, and then you basically have remote command and control to a Docker container using GitOps.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. GitOps. Yeah, I'm really fascinated with GitOps lately. I mean, with Argo CD, Helm, and what it is capable of, and how convenient it is. It's really convenient, right? I mean, We didn't have that stuff a couple of years ago. Now we have it like Argos. Argos is amazing. I like it.
It is convenient. There's a dip though to get there, right? A big investment to get everything in a manner in which you can deploy it, just doing automation and pull requests. But
Yeah,
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 once you get there,
yeah.
that's the way to go.
Yeah, but you have to have really good, for example, cross Kubernetes clusters communication, right? I mean, and that has overhead from a security point of view, and make it secure, make it high available. It takes some time to like get it going, but once you get it going, just the team starts working really fast.
Exactly. That's when the all the cylinders are firing and the team is working smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next announcement is a new Terraform module that we have and published through the registry, and it might leave some of you with your head scratching, like, why are we doing this? So this is a new Terraform module. We're calling it terraform-yaml-config. It doesn't depend on any providers. It's just based on the Terraform core. And it wraps the YAML decode method that you have in Terraform, but we do a few cool things with this. And I'll give you an example first of all why we came up with this module, and then I'll show a little bit how it works briefly. So the challenge that we've had as a company is codifying patterns and multiple sets of competing patterns for customers. So Terraform is a great tool for configuration as code or infrastructure as code, and that's the way most people use it. And you embed the architecture of what you're deploying in the Terraform code along with maybe some feature flags. An example would be maybe a module that implements AWS config rules for monitoring for CIS compliance, or maybe you're integrating Datadog and you want to have a lot of monitors and configurations for, here are the monitors for EKS, here are the monitors for RDS, here are the monitors for EC2s, etc. And the way it's conventionally been done in Terraform is you implement like a submodule for each one of those, and you have lots of feature flags. But if you wanted to wrap that up in different kinds of configuration, like here is our recommended flags for CIS, here's our recommended flags for EKS, then it got hard for us to do that. And we've taken an approach, which is that we define the actual configuration now more and more as YAML, and we can centralize those YAML configurations as a catalog, and we can now distribute that catalog so anyone can pull it. So you can use our same module with different catalogs to get different predefined configurations. And this is how we're doing a lot of stuff now for customers. So what we have is this YAML config module that lets us pull local configurations, lets us pull remote configurations that are pinned at versions, and lets us do interpolations on these. So these are actually passed through the template file function before we YAML decode them. So you can pass some parameters. So we have parameterized configurations that we can load on demand into our modules. We are typically, the way we use this module is in our root module. So if we go to Terraform, AWS components, these are, we've renamed what we call root modules. We are now calling those components. And in our components, that's where we use this module. So I think we might have an example here if I look at Datadog. So here we load the Datadog. We load our configurations. We have our configurations that we want to load, defined in YAML, defined in a configuration file. I'll show you that in a second. And then we pass those to our Datadog monitor. So you see how composable these things are and how easy it is to pass. And then in our defaults here, we have an example. So then we load these catalogs of monitors. So you can see that as the community continues to contribute configurations for us, we can have a massive catalog of EC2 monitors, of Aurora RDS monitors, of EKS monitors, etc. And that's what we are building up. Any questions on this strategy and why we're doing it?
It's really cool. I was looking for something like that today, actually. It's pretty funny.
No way.
Yeah.
It's this
Well, so
Leibniz and Descartes, always working on similar problems.
yeah, not quite as elaborate, but you know, I did eventually just get to the YAML and decode, and that seemed like it's probably going to get me most of
Yeah.
what I want. But this is pretty cool. So it seems like you guys are actually supporting like is it the merging of multiple YAML files? Is that what I'm seeing
Yeah, yeah.
here?
So we support the merging of multiple YAML files, and also we are also adding a feature flag. So this YAML module is foundational to us now. We have a lot of foundational modules. Another foundational module is our null label. Another foundational module is our AWS utils. And this is a foundational module for passing configuration. And what we are going to add to it very soon is a feature flag that supports a custom, YAML doesn't support imports, right? It supports YAML anchors. And by the way, YAML anchors are awesome for configuration and keeping your configs dry. Also supported by Terraform. But we're adding a custom proprietary extension, invalid YAML, called imports. So you can have a list of imports there that we merge together. So you can have composable YAML files that are remote and
Very
local.
cool.
And that's really important for us as a professional services company that needs to have economies of scale of configuration.
For sure, for sure. And where are the template values coming from?
So so in this case, so the
Yeah,
template
sorry.
values, are you saying like the parameters we pass the template file?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those would be defined here, but they're totally optional. So right now we don't pass any, but here I could have another section that is parameters. So it could be like AWS root account ID. It could
Right.
be, EKS pod threshold or something. I don't know, making random things up, and those can be substituted into the templates. This stuff could be done in native Terraform a little bit, but I really also like the fact that this YAML configuration becomes a more and more declarative way for us to express what we want to have provisioned as another abstraction on top of Terraform. Yeah, when is the madness going to stop? But YAML works across tools. We can use YAML with Helm file. We can use YAML with Terraform. We can use YAML with our other configuration tools that we use. YAML is just a portable format. I like it.
That's good.
Cool. I'll link to this example in the Office Hours channel. I'll link to the YAML module as well, so you guys can check that out.
Can you open the file, one of those YAMLs? I'm just curious how you structure those.
Oh yeah, yeah. So let's take a look at one of those. So a good example of that is we have now an SCP module for service control policies. And this is a perfect example where you might have HIPAA service control policies. You might have PCI or SOC or high trust or all these different things that you want to satisfy. And that's what we can accomplish with this. So right now we don't have those specific standards defined, but here's an example for organization policies. And now we've defined the SIDs for that, the statement IDs. So we're using, more or less the Amazon expected format for that. But we are also using it for Datadog. And you see, so our convention is this. You look in the module and you see a catalog. So this is our catalog of configurations that you can use with this module. You can create your own. We'll accept yours if you contribute them. We would love to have high trust and PCI and HIPAA catalogs available. And then for Datadog is another good example. We for Datadog we borrowed the convention that Astro uses. I'll explain. I've mentioned Astro before, but this is, so you define a monitor, you give it a name, like a resource name, and then you define all the parameters. This way, it's totally flexible. You can define your queries in Datadog however you want, and these are our same defaults, but you can always fork it and have your own. We could parameterize these by putting in $ interpolation values here. That could be set when we load it using the YAML-config module.
And this somehow gets translated into Terraform HCL that creates like a metric alert resource or whatever?
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool.
So you can see how like anybody who wants to contribute, all they need to do is copy and paste a block like this, come up with their own query, bam. And I find that is a very accessible way for other people to contribute to this without creating ginormous Terraform modules. So the Terraform module just needs to validate that it can implement these things, but then you do your checks separately. And we're doing the same pattern with OpsGenie. This is like foundational to everything we're doing now, is truly separating configuration from the business logic and not conflating those two in our Terraform modules. All right, so that was the YAML configuration. Just a heads up, we do have we have a lot of modules being developed right now as we're picking up a lot of steam on our engagements. And some of those modules are related to security. So these are a work in progress. So they haven't been merged yet, but you can follow. The reason I bring this up is if you guys were looking for this right now and this is a priority for you, just heads up, we're releasing some stuff on it. Maybe you want to pause if your timelines make up for it. So we have our AWS config module coming out. We have our security, we already merged our security hub module. We have our AWS guard duty module coming out. So implementing the suite of AWS security oriented products. So yeah, just heads up on these things if you want to follow along. Anybody looking right now into Security Hub, Guard Duty, AWS config to implement those? What's interesting really about the Security Hub one is if you are looking to get like PCI compliance, it has like the canned rule sets that help notify you when you're falling out of compliance for that. So I'm excited for that. All right, next announcement would be, we do have a special guest speaker coming up in a week or two here. December 2nd, we will have Lee Skillen. He's the CTO of Cloudsmith. So Cloudsmith is the service that we are using now at Cloud Posse to host all of our packages. And I just think it's a really rad service. I like to promote services that we ourselves use and are dogfooding. So he's going to be on and talking about some of the hardships of managing packages at scale, and it's a messy process. We tried doing it ourselves, so I was super happy to move all that tech debt over to Cloudsmith instead. Anybody curious about package management and how to do it?
Yeah, I've been because when we work with teams, we don't always go, for example, all the way in abstraction to like Packer.
Yeah.
Most times, we just build a container, publish it in the registry, and from there on, just push it to some environment, right, to see how it performs. Maybe we can run some tests, in the build. Maybe before the build, it's sometimes can be complicated, right? But I'm exploring that right now, and I'm curious how I can because the more abstraction you add, the more data you can collect, and the more observability you have. That's the whole idea, right? So
potentially, yeah.
Yeah. So go on. I'm
or
curious.
Headaches. But yeah, so we, to your point, like we love Docker, we do use Packer, and we still have package management, and the reason is that often you want to install various different versions of the same package. So having kind of our tool chain published in a package repository solved that for us. So we depend on all these tools, we distribute packages for all those, and then it's very easy to say, well, we need this version of Terraform with this version of, I don't know, the GitHub client with this version of Helm and Helm file, etc. And we can just stitch that together without having to look up where those sources come from. Plus, we get all the automatic package updates. When we do, apt-get update, we can pull in the latest versions if we want to try that out. So yeah,
the subject. Sorry.
yeah. it's like we tried doing this other ways, and then all we realized was, wait, we're actually building a distribution, and we had all the same headaches that any company does as they start building a distribution. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we figure, we'll do what's tried and true. All right, so the next announcement was that AWS has come out finally with their own firewall product, and some of us might be scratching our heads like, all right, how does this relate to security groups, NACLs, WAF, I don't know, everything else that they have? And it's, I guess two things. One, it fills off, it helps you satisfy that compliance checklist you got to do, first of all, where they say you have a firewall. So now, security groups technically didn't have the word firewall in there, so that didn't meet compliance, maybe, even though it did a lot of the same stuff. So then you had to go the route and install your Palo Alto and pay that. So now Amazon finally has a product called Firewall, meets the compliance requirement, and does some degree of packet introspection, I think, and intrusion prevention system here, looking at the traffic flows and stuff like that. So proactive, threat mitigation is what this is pitched as. Haven't looked at it. I bet Terraform probably already has a PR for it. So if anybody else is looking into it, I hope you stop by office hours soon and let us know how it worked out for you.
Yeah, that sounds like a fintech approach to that. Jesus, right? But
yeah,
that's good. Yeah, that's really fintech. They're gonna analyze all the data flow.
You said fintech?
Well, in the fintech industry,
they're going to need that, or like high trust. They all have these.
And they just implement the similar patterns of compliance about security and about approach. To do it.
Yeah.
Oh well. Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. This is just like a heads up. Haven't also checked it out. For those of you using Kubernetes and using Lens as your local kind of Kubernetes IDE for interacting with Lens, for interacting with Kubernetes instead of kubectl, Headlamp is now an alternative to Lens. Kind of similar in the UI. I do like the look and feel of Lens more a little bit. It looks like Lens is a little bit more feature rich. There was some concern about the future of Lens until Mirantis acquired it, and I think is putting their weight behind it to keep it up to date. So I don't know how good of a chance Headlamp stands, but competition is always good.
Yeah, and actually I might as well mention K9S. I don't know if you guys have tried it. It's a terminal-based UI. It's awesome.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just simpler to install than those other approaches.
Yeah, this is great when you are stuck on the
I
console and don't have your graphical tools. So yeah, we'll link K9S as well. It's pretty nice.
It's better than the graphical tools. I'll just put that. I'm gonna go out there and say that.
Yeah, you were using Lens too, so you use K9S over Lens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fast to navigate, very easy to install, and
and the developer's a freaking rock star, man. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
There's some good videos too about functionality. Yeah, Andy, I'll never forget you for that one, man. You threw that over the wall. I've been turning people in my company.
My entire team uses K9s. Other teams use K9s because they've seen us use it.
Very cool.
It's so, because it's like things with Lens, for example. If you're using, if you're doing the role stuff with EKS, it's a lot harder to use something like Lens. Yeah. Versus with K9s, I can just literally, I can run AWS Vault exec, whatever my account name is, -- K9s. And it will have all that role stuff just all figured out already. So I can connect to my Kubernetes cluster, and I don't have to worry about figuring out all that IAM crap.
Yeah, no, that's a compelling use case for doing that, and less typing too. So we do distribute K9S also as part of our package repository, so that you can easily install it on Debian and Alpine too. So check that out. The next thing, we had a couple weeks ago, we had a experimental kind of thing, like talking about horror stories that we've gone through and empathizing with each other. This post just came up through my news feed. I haven't looked too closely to it. It was just on point with what we talked about before. So more Kubernetes horror stories for you to check out. But I like to focus on the positive today, so we're going to skip that right now. We have these nice mugs here. Just want to say sweetops mugs. If you are interested in getting your own little swag, those are available. If you go to our swag store, go to swag.cloudposse.com and you can get your own mugs. It's there's a little bit of markup, but it's really just to cover our cost of operating the store. We just want you guys to show your support if you want to and check it out. We got lots of little things there. And last announcement was Terraform related. Really excited about this. So a week ago from today, the release candidate 1 of 0.14 drops, which adds the support for sensitive variables. That way, if those variables ever appear in the output, it'll be masked. Also really exciting is 0.14 onwards, remote state access will be portable. So this has been a really big problem when you're upgrading between versions of Terraform, is that you couldn't read the remote state consistently. And now that's going to be possible. So what else was exciting? New functions for evaluating logical and ors. So all these settings are true, or any of these are true. Those are going to help clean up some of your Terraform code. Concise, a feature flag that you can enable to get an even more concise diff output. This is really nice if you are maybe posting the output of your Terraform plan to a GitHub comment. You don't need all that fluff around the comment. Maybe you just want to see what it impacts. This is a great thing to enable them. Also, they're going to come out with a lock file system. Right now, unfortunately, the lock file is only for providers, but eventually that lock file will come out for modules too. And I think that's going to be really cool. So you can like version pin your modules to a major release, but then do locking with a lock file to keep it up to date or stable. Any other takeaways from like the 0.14?
I'm super excited about the lock files. That's been one really kind of pain.
Yeah, that's
that
gonna be huge.
will let you be more relaxed on the version pinning of stuff. It's great.
Yeah, and it's this thing borrowing again against other patterns proven by other languages, Go, Python, and npm, etc. that have it. So
does put a greater onus on module maintainers to be very careful about backward compatibility, though.
it does, and when everything is a 0.x release, the log files aren't as effective because we're not doing that many major releases. But I think I think we as a company, Cloud Posse, can start thinking about our 1.0 releases pretty soon. We've had these modules in production for years now, and the patterns and interfaces are stabilizing. Maybe it's time for 1.0 on a lot of these modules soon. All right, so we are done with my announcements. We'll use the rest of the time to kind of go over a couple questions that were brought up. RB, are you on the call? So I guess I'll just answer it quickly, and if anybody else has any tips, RB is a regular. I'm sure he's going to tune in later. He had a question asked in the Office Hours channel about like, how do you go about finding mentors for SRE? But then kind of backpedal and generalize it. Like, how do you go about finding mentors? Period. And it's kind of funny because I have a mentor, and I literally had this question for him on my monthly session with him because I want to get board of advisors for Cloud Posse, and how do I go about that? And the wrong way in my book is kind of like, just reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, can you be my best friend? Hey, can you be my mentor? Right? It's a little awkward. You got to establish a little bit of rapport first. You got to establish some connection. And one of the ideas that he had also is just like, what if you just start by mentoring yourself, right? And then through that, things maybe fall into place. Maybe those people you mentor become reciprocal mentors as well in other things. The other thing is not limiting yourself to one mentor in any one of these things. We all have lots of different experience. We're subject matter experts in different ways. So I think thinking about, first of all, identifying what kinds of areas do you feel you have the biggest gaps on and the least insight on architecture or overview, and then put a list together of potential people that you're interested who could meet that niche, and start interacting with them on Twitter. If they have projects that they maintain on GitHub, become an active participant, opening issues, and start establishing an interest in that. And it goes both ways. You'll start picking up just by doing that, and you'll be recognized, and it won't be so awkward in the end when you set up some time to talk with them. Biggest thing I've realized is people are super friendly in general. You can just email them at some point and jump on a call and see where things go. Any additions? How would you guys go about finding mentors? Have you found mentors? Do you have mentors? What's your advice?
I can say something about the mentor.
Go ahead, Andy.
Somebody else said something?
I think the biggest one for me has been like just working with other people who are doing what you're trying to do. So like the office hours thing and stuff here, but people what I work with too. But it's like the time in my life that I had the least mentors, and I struggled the most with trying to figure things out for myself, and I didn't really have anyone to fall back on, was just when I was trying to do self-employed, and do it on my own. And it just turned out that I just wasn't ready for that, so it's,
Yeah. I mean, and our community, I think, is a great place to start looking and being involved. You'll see a lot of regulars here. And we have channels like around release engineering and SRE. So that's probably a good place to start to get to know some folks and eventually, maybe find mentorship opportunities.
I think this is Blaze.
I'm interrupting for the second time someone. Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
I'm in Europe, yeah.
Or go ahead, Blaze. Do you want to go, and then we'll get to
I was going to
Stefan.
say that there's one distinction or one situation you might find yourself in is there may be a difference between a mentor and a consultant in the sense that if your relationship to the material is more long-term, like the way a martial artist or a musician might be, then you can find the mentors. You can find a mentor basically by making contributions to that craft or that community, like sweeping the floor, for example, in the dojo. Right?
Yeah.
And eventually, so that's if it's a long term. If your relationship to the material is like, forever. But if what you're looking for is basically somebody to give you advice on a particular topic and it's more short term, then you'll probably, if you approach it, if that's the situation, you're better off approaching it as a consultant, where you say, hey, I need some guidance in this range of areas, and it's, and that way you're going to get higher, everybody's going to be happier with your arrangement.
Yep, I totally agree. Don't look for doing it free. I testify for myself at Cloud Posse. I have paid for mentorship. I've paid for consultants basically to get me up to speed on things. 5 years ago, that was Kubernetes. Pierre Kircher, I'll never forget, he totally untangled this mess of Kubernetes for me over many very expensive phone calls. And there's others that I pay right now as well for that same kind of advice. So approach things from a consulting perspective. I think that's great advice, Blaze. And be prepared to offer real fair consulting prices, $250, $300 an hour. But look, you don't need 10 hours. You need 1 or 2 hours here or there. So. All right. Stefan, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say something funny about mentorship. Hackerspace is a really good place to find people with similar interests. That's the place where my mentor comes from, you know. I started going to one hackerspace and just being around people that share similar, like, what they are influenced by, interest and so on. And there I found a mentor, and he's one of those really old school Linux guys that have been working since 1995, for example, building data centers and so on. And it was really beneficial for him to explain to me, for example, networks. And also a great friend. And I just want to say that hackerspace are amazing places to also grow with other people, but a little bit off from the corporate like feeling, you know.
Yeah. I agree generally with the sentiment of that. I think so. Hackerspaces are definitely more common also in like major cities with a tech hub or whatever you're doing. I guess if you're like in some more remote town with different industries, it could be harder. Somebody else also recommends meetup groups is also a good option. All right, let me jump over to the next topic. That was really interesting. So the next question is, how are people capturing Cognito configurations via code? Are you using Terraform to accomplish the infrastructure as code for Cognito? This is by Chris. Are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. I will say for ourselves, we don't have, Cloud Posse doesn't yet have a strategy for Cognito, so I can't answer. I think that there were some gaps in the Terraform provider's ability to truly Terraform Cognito end to end for some things, but I'm going to pause it right there. Anybody else have a bona fide solution for this? How are you doing it? All right, there you have it. No, I don't know. Maybe
that's what
somebody
my
on the
research
next call.
turned up to.
Yeah, I know we've definitely used Cognito for setting up authorization and authentication with end user apps, but doing it for like within AWS. I know we've had some gaps there that haven't been filled, but I don't know it personally from firsthand experience. All right, let's pause on that one. Maybe next week we'll bring it up again and see if somebody else has something for that. So Andrew, you brought up a question. Definitely have an opinion on. I'm actually more interested about in the devil's advocate position from my perspective on why you wouldn't do this. So Andrew Roth asks in a pseudo poll, do you turn on for branch protections, dismiss PR approvals when a new commit is merged? Why or why not? So the answer is for Cloud Posse unilaterally, yes. We always dismiss pull request approvals as soon as new commits are pushed because it's stale. There's no way to programmatically enforce that the new push does anything similar to what the previous one did. We just force a code review process. What's the counter argument to that? Anybody else categorically do the opposite of what we say?
The overhead to the developer process.
True.
I'm a little bit on the fence, but I'm definitely leaning your way. I just wanted to get more people's opinion. What I kind of figured out about it was, like, if I have, so the very next checkbox in that window is require code owner approval, right? So if you have your code owner's file set up and you change 3 files and it happens to be owned by 3 different people, the 3 files are each owned by a different code owner, you might have, require 1 approval set, but you're going to actually need 3 approvals,
It's
right?
true. Yeah.
And then let's say 2 people approve it, and then 1 person has some nitpicky little change. And if I make a nitpicky little change to 1 line, I'm going to satisfy the 3rd person, but I'm going to have to go back to the other 2 people and get their reapproval. You know, and that's not a huge deal, but it wastes a little bit of time, and
It does,
particularly in my company and field, you know, people aren't sitting there hovering over their GitHub all the time, you know, so it might take me a couple hours to get another approval because, you know, they're off in meetings or whatever. However, the very important key, you know, distinction and why they probably still should be done is if I change a makefile, you know, that's owned by the admin team or whatever, and I get the approval from the admin team, and then I change it again, it does not require another approval from them unless you have that box clicked.
yeah.
So if I change it to be something innocuous and they approve it, and then I change it to be something evil, they're never going to see the evil change.
Exactly. It really is going back to the honor system at that point, and then what is the benefit of it? When I think the real benefit of branch protections and the code owners is that it enables a governance more by policy, and it allows you to take a step back and allow a lot more autonomy for things, except for when certain key things change. So I don't think you got to do code owners just for the fact of doing code owners. You should actually do code owners when you need to have those code owners review these changes. Changes to like your GitHub actions, maybe. Changes to IAM. Changes to stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, without that, it's like asking for the signature on the bottom of the page, and then you fill out the contract later. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't have that, it's like you could write whatever you want in there at that point. It's not really getting someone to approve it if you don't do that.
Also, really important thing I should almost not say. I know of a company that screwed up their code owners file. And the problem is that there's no real, the default behavior if you have a corrupt code owner's file is no behavior. So the problem is like this code owner's file, if you refer to a team, for example, that's private, doesn't do anything. If you refer to a GitHub app, doesn't do anything. So one of the things that we are just working on right now is we've just released is adding code owners validation every time that file changes. Highly recommend it. Otherwise, it's a false sense of security that can go really wrong. All right. Stefan, I think at the very beginning you had some question you wanted to ask. Let me see if we have that in the Office Hours channel.
No, I just didn't know how you structure the codes, and I just wrote that I'm going to ask probably something about Terraform or Helm, but actually I like the level, so I don't need. I will know. It's really good.
All right.
Disregard them. Yeah, ignore.
All right. All right. Any other questions we can get to here today? I'm having total blindness and cannot see the Office Hours channel in my list. All right. That was not what I meant to click. All right. Don't see any other questions here. Any other questions we can cover?
I was curious about timestamps, if people have had to do very detailed timestamp management across clusters, like across regions.
Oh, like synchronized clocks, kind of like whatever Google does with the Spanner database.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly like what Google does with the Spanner database. Exactly.
No, other than I know that
Google
Amazon
do
provides
with the
this
Spanner
as a service,
database?
but, yeah. What was that, Andrew?
What does Google do with the Spanner database?
Oh, you don't know about the clocks? Okay.
No.
So the TLDR there is that software developers don't really understand time. So I know that's
I feel attacked.
no,
I'm
I mean,
kidding.
yeah,
It's true.
Just ask a developer how long it's going to take, and you can prove that fact.
Oh, I don't know, whatever. 2 sprints.
yeah. So for example, so the way that I mean, there's lots and lots of things that software developers don't know about time, but the way that expresses itself most commonly is that people think that because they synchronize a server with an NTP signal, that then all of the other servers in their cluster that synchronize against the same thing will be in sync with each other. And that just isn't true. What Google does with the Spanner database is they realize that if you have a really, really good handle on time, not a bullshit retail consumer handle on time, but like a real pro handle, like radio astronomer handle.
Atomic clock handle on time.
Yeah. Then you can use timestamps as a proxy for state. So if you know when that certain things happened at a particular point in time with respect to each other, then they can be part of the same transaction. And that is so instead of shipping state back and forth across data centers, what they do is they just keep really good track of time and reconcile the drift, right? So there's always going to be a little bit of variance in every particular clock. And so they track that, and then they can offset to figure out exactly when something happened. So my application is actually a little different. We've got data, we've got stuff going in different AWS regions, and we don't need to do it yet, but I want to be able to have a forensically defensible log of when things happen, so people can reconcile against an independent external time signal.
So one thing I've seen that I've actually started using, if you're talking about inside a Kubernetes cluster and you happen to be using a service mesh like Istio, is setting the logging messages with whatever data you want inside the Envoy proxy logging messages, because that pulls that work of having to figure that stuff out of the application and into the platform.
Well, that's very nice. Okay, sure.
So we have thousands of developers in the company, and there are certain things that for compliance reasons we have to do the same way everywhere. And one of them is like access logging, of just network traffic and whatever. And rather than trying to put together some kind of policy that every single app development team has to follow for this is how you must do access logging to your application, Envoy proxy sits in front of everything and does it for them, so they don't have to worry about it. So I could see something like that for timestamps as well. Maybe not servers all over, but anything inside the cluster would all be coming from the same kind of source of time, wherever that is.
And the sidecar is responsible for having that single source of truth, kind of. Yeah. It's like I in principle I love the sidecar thing, but it gets a little madness now when every vendor has their sidecar. And to deploy one service, now you have 5 sidecars. You got your service mesh, you got your container scanner, you got your log aggregator, you got your APM, you got your list goes on.
I think the value comes from scale, right? It's if you have 1 or 2 development teams, you can closely monitor how they're doing those things inside their application such that they're doing it the right way. If you have 100 development teams that have to do it the right way, you don't want any of them to do it the right way. You want to do it the right way at the platform level and just inject.
I agree with exactly. I get it. I agree with the pattern, and it's a generalizable, extensible way of doing it. And that's why it is that way. So cool.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to like learn more about time, just read the docs for cron Y. Cron Y is the modern NTP client. It's what the big kids use.
That's interesting. I haven't heard about that. Can you link to cron Y in the?
Sure. In fact, AWS uses it now in their it's the default NTP client for Amazon Linux.
Good to know. I have a question. Anybody using Bottle Rocket with EKS right now? Just curious. No. All right. Well, we are, I think, unfortunately out of time for today. It was a another great session here. We're going to be posting a video recording of this session to YouTube in a little bit, and as well as syndicating it to our podcast and Office Hours channel. So head over to youtube.com/c/Cloud Posse if you want to subscribe to our channel, as well as our podcast or any of these links here that you see, cloudposse.com/podcast. Anyways, we will, I look forward to talking with everybody, same time, same place next week. Remember to register for our office hours. If you haven't already, go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of your week and talk to you soon.
Thanks again, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.